Yeah, absolutely. My name's Jack Model. I'm with B&A Studios. We're a planning firm that works with landowners and developers on applications to the city of Calgary. So today we're here to speak to you about an application at 108 Mission Road in Erlton. I'll start with some introductions for our team. Martha already covered how to participate, and I've just flash that up here as well. So the Q&A function and asking questions directly by raising the hand. We'll do all the Q&A at the end. We'll try to keep the presentation fairly brief and leave most of the time for questions. So I'll introduce our team. Martha is here with our communication and engagement group. And Jane, do you want to also introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Jane. Feel free to send any additional feedback to me. My email is down there below, but I'll also send it at the end of this event.
And can I
I'm with
pass it over
B&A
to Bev?
Studios. Sorry?
Yes. Thank you, Jane and Jack and Martha. My name is Bev Jarvis. I am Director of Engagement and Communications with Onward. And we're really happy to be with you here this evening. And I believe we have with us Chris from Onward. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Bev. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the session. My name is Chris Slater. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Onward. I'll hand it over to you, Paul.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Getty, and I'm with Western Vertical and I'm assisting Onward with the development application.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So just to kick off, I'd like to give Bev a chance to just talk a little bit about who Onward is and yeah, just a sense.
For sure. Thanks very much, Jack. So a little bit about Onward, who we are and the Calgarians we serve. Our vision at Onward is with homes for all, people and communities thrive. We are not for profit, operating in the city of Calgary for nearly 50 years. Onward is the rebranded organization resulting from the merger of Horizon Housing and Forward Housing in 2022. We are a federally registered charity, which means that our portfolio of units remains affordable in perpetuity. Currently, we have approximately 2,200 units across 33 buildings, and we serve a diverse mix of low-income Calgarians. Our residents are singles, families, seniors, youth, new Canadians, and Indigenous people, and others. We are housing only. Our residents must be able to live independently. We do not provide support services. However, we do work with upwards of 60 social service agencies, which may refer and provide supports to residents. Onward uses the mixed income model, which means that we have deep subsidy rentals that are offset with near market affordable rents. We believe it's a healthy model that reduces social stigma, it integrates into communities, and it is financially sustainable. The rent geared to income model means that as residents' financial status improves, they're not required to move, which maintains their housing, community, and social stability. Onward's purpose is to build and own affordable, well cared for homes. And we believe that is the foundation of well being and belonging. And now, Jack, maybe you can share a bit more about this project.
Sure thing. Bev, before I start, do you want to touch a little bit on, or even maybe Paul could speak to the how this land was acquired?
Most definitely. Paul, would you like to share the non-market land disposition process we went through with the City of Calgary?
Sure, happy to. So, in the summer of 2024, the city launched multiple properties which were city-owned land into what was called the non-market land sale. And essentially, this was available and open to nonprofit housing operators to apply for, and it was based on a competitive model. And projects were scored on their levels of sustainability, accessibility, their track record, um, their management expertise, and a host of other factors. And we are very happy to say that Onward was a successful applicant for this site. And we are very excited to be moving forward with it.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And yeah, I think that's a good segue into talking about what this project is. As Paul and Beth have mentioned, the land was acquired with the intention to follow through on a development of approximately 60 affordable housing units on this site. That's a commitment that was made to the city in terms of the agreement to purchase this land. So in terms of context, it's at 108 Mission Road. It is the site that is it hosted the EDMAX substation that's now decommissioned. It's right on the boundary between Erlton and Park Hill communities. It actually kind of jogs right around this site. So it really equally affects both communities. The existing land use is called multi-residential contextual grade oriented, and the land use that we are changing to is MC2, which is multi-residential contextual as well. And so these are very similar land uses, and the MC2 was recommended to us by the City of Calgary in order to keep the consistent character of this neighborhood. However, we will be making some modifications through something called a direct control district, and I'll go a little bit more into detail on that. So the policy guidance, as of yesterday, fairly recently, the West Elbow Local Area Plan was adopted by Council. So this means that this policy area will apply to this site as well as a fairly broad area, and it supersedes the previously existing Erlton area redevelopment plan. This site is shown, you can see it at the very bottom in the blue circle. So it's shown as a neighborhood connector category at up to 6 stories in height. So from the initiation of this application, we knew that this policy was in draft and we sought to align with what this policy said. This application will be for multi-residential at less than 6 stories in height. In terms of the site itself, it's a very unique site. It's not as large as it appears from the street. Only a portion of this site is actually the parcel that's been purchased. Additionally, the parcel has pretty significant grade between Mission Road at the bottom and Erlton Terrace on the top. It's an irregularly shaped site, and it requires some unique considerations, with Erlton Terrace being a very small roadway to the north, and with Mission Road being a busy and active roadway on the south. So providing a little bit of detail at this early stage of land use about the site building envelope, where a building could hypothetically be located on this site. And this is to initiate the conversation, which we will then be following through in more detail at a future development permit application, where you will see details of the height, the massing, and specific interfaces of the building. So as I mentioned, we were directed to use MC2. So this gives us a set of bylaw setbacks that we need to provide. Specifically on the east side, we are incorporating a wider setback from the homes on that side because there's a utility right of way. In terms of the way this building would theoretically be accessed, we perceive the best access as coming from Mission Road rather than from Erlton Terrace. That would be a drive under parkade access, coming in directly at grade and going underneath the building in such a way that the first floor from Erlton Terrace would be approximately 1 story above the parkade. So this site design is conceptual, but we do believe that this could be a 5 or potentially up to 6-story building with a mix of housing types, including studio 1 and 2 bedroom units. This application was submitted in March. We've met with both community associations, and we are now having our public information session. Through the month of May, we'll be receiving comments from the public as well as from the city, and we anticipate going forward to Planning Commission in June and Council in July. So now I'd like to open up the opportunity to do our Q&A, and I'll hand it over to Martha.
Thanks, Jack. So just a reminder, there is a questions function at the bottom of your Zoom profile, so within your app or within your browser, and you can submit questions that way. We've got a couple hands up as well, so please do raise your hand if you'd like to speak your question, and we're going to get to everyone in order. I will be paraphrasing some questions slightly or grouping them by theme as well if we're getting a lot of questions in, and this evening we're going to do our best to get to all the questions that are submitted. And of course, we'll also be following up with all participants and those who registered with a bit of a summary and overview of the meeting. So first question came in from an earlier slide, and Jack, you might need to go back a bit, but the question is, the land use change application with the city closed on the 5th. And why was this meeting happening after the decision was made? And I'm just wondering, I don't know necessarily about the 5th date, but perhaps
I can answer that. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for the question. When the city posts the notice on site, there is a close date. In general, for any application, that close date really only means the first opportunity for them to provide feedback back to us. However, on any application, and I think this is important, everyone should know this, you can continue to provide feedback to the city and also obviously it's to us as the applicant right up until it goes before Planning Commission and Council. But we also did hear about that concern, and the submission date has been changed to the 21st. Yeah, as someone mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. And then it was Amy who submitted that question. She also has her hand up. So I'm just going to go over to Amy. And Amy, I'm going to ask you to unmute so you have a chance to ask your question. So Amy,
Sorry,
go
sorry, I
ahead.
thought I was unmuted, but I wasn't.
There you
Hi,
go.
thank you. So the submission date has changed to the 21st. Is that what you mentioned, Jack?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. That's appreciated. That wasn't actually my other question though, so I'm just going to jump in if you don't mind. I think for myself and a couple of the other residents of Erlton Terrace, one of the concerns is the height. Is the height at all negotiable? And then the second question around that, you're saying 6 stories, but you mentioned that the first story starts at the parkade. Does that mean we're actually talking 7 stories here?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the way that height is measured is from the very bottom of the building at the lowest point to the highest. So we were talking about 5 to 6 stories as measured from the bottom. So no more than likely 5 stories as measured from the top of Erlton Terrace would be the likely outcome that we're expecting here. I think we would like to be able to give more detail about the building, but we're just a bit too soon. And the only thing I would say is that our goal is to fit the committed to number of units on the site in the best way possible. And even though it is a constrained site, we're working with a really good architect on this, Citizen Architecture, and would like to see as much of a reduction in the impact to any surrounding units as possible.
Okay, but so you're firm on the 62 units, because to me, if you're going to do 62 units, you're going to need at least 5 stories. Like that just seems, egregious in the changes of, what we're expecting. So is 62 units firm? Do we have no negotiation on that either?
Let me let either Paul or Bev address that one.
Paul, I wonder if you'd like to comment on our commitment with the City of Calgary on the non-market land disposition agreement.
Sure, I'm happy to step in. So part of our application was it was a minimum unit count. And we are now bound by that minimum unit count as a part of our agreement with the City of Calgary. So we do have to meet that in this application and with the project moving forward.
Okay, that's very interesting to note, because before the land was designated for 12 units. So to hear that it's now moved to 62 as a minimum is quite frankly very shocking.
And Amy, I would add to that nothing has been approved. We are seeking approval for land use, right? So there is in the West Elbow Local Area Plan policy guidance for up to 6 stories, and that applies in a lot of areas now that have those local area plans. But we do not have land use approval yet for this site, so that is what we're seeking.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy. On that question, Jack, we did actually, I think, get a question that does pertain to the West Elbow local area plan that came in from Gord. And just mentioning, why did we not receive this planning when the planning documents last summer were sent out? This was not included. So perhaps you can speak a bit to maybe some of what this community has seen over the last year in terms of planning documents versus this application.
Sure. I might have to ask a little bit of a question of clarification of Gord, and maybe we'll understand a bit more what he means. But I'll try to address what I think is being asked, which is, the difference between the policy that's being approved by the city administration, the West Elbow LAP, and approved by council, and then also the decision to sell this land to a developer who would plan to build a certain number of units on it. Those things may be connected, but they are fundamentally different groups within the city that don't always necessarily have agreement and alignment. So when the engagement for the LAP was happening, they are doing very broad strokes type planning and just talking about what this could hypothetically be. And now we are actually coming in with an application to intend to develop on it. And I hope that helps.
Yeah, and Gord, if you have any other follow-up questions, you're welcome to raise your hand or just submit another question if we didn't address your question fully. We have a couple questions in terms of height that have come through, Jack, and so perhaps maybe we could go back or to some of. So question is one question around what does the building height mean in terms of meters or feet when we're discussing stories?
Sure. Yeah. So the base district that we are using has a maximum of 16 meters. Now, typically for residential, you can divide by 3 on average for a floor. So 16 meters is intended to allow for up to 5 or maybe 6 stories if you're really making it work. But usually MC2 is about 4 stories total. Because of the way the site is graded, there's as much as a 5 meter difference between the bottom and the top, and that's incorporated into the way the city measures the height of the building. So we're really not talking about increasing the height sufficiently to accommodate an extra story. We're just making sure that the way it's measured is correct.
And again, if there's ever further clarification or further questions on the questions being submitted and the answers we give, please do raise your hand. We invite further clarification as needed. We had another comment generally about the concern of height, which we have heard through some emails prior to the session. This one participant is asking, how can residents and adjacent neighbors express their concerns about the height? So what is the process that people can participate in to express concerns they're seeing?
This is part of that process to provide public feedback to us. We're the applicant, so obviously, we're taking on feedback in one area, and we are required to provide that information to the city as well, and to discuss how we're addressing or responding to feedback. But also, the contact information for the city is available on the sign that's on site. You can also go to their development map on their website online. And the last opportunity, I suppose, would be at the public hearing of council, which we anticipate to be in July. And everyone in the immediate vicinity would be circulated for that public hearing.
Thanks, Jack, for the clarification too on that. Another question for height, and then we've got a couple hands up, so we're going to go to the hands after this. So Henna, you've had your hand up, so I'm going to ask this first question, then we'll come to you next, just to get you ready. Someone's asking, going back to you were discussing the grade over the site. There's a question about whether we'll be building at sidewalk grade or removing the impact of the slope. Will there be some grade changes being done through development? Yeah, Jack.
Sure, I can start answering, and if my answer is not sufficient, I'll see if Paul might want to fill in the blanks. In terms of where the building is measured from, it's measured from the edge of the building at grade, so where it meets the ground, to the top of the building at that point. This site does not go completely down to the sidewalk level. However, our intention, the idea to best build the site based on the test fit that was done would be for the parkade to come in approximately at that sidewalk level, and maybe even down a little bit. And so that would be a good estimation of where the grade is.
Paul, anything
Is
to
that
add to that?
good, Paul?
Yeah, I will say that, the slopes on this site are challenging, and we're still working through the details of how to best accommodate a slope adaptive design for this. And the technicality between 5 and 6 stories comes with where the entrance is on this project, and the entrance will be at sidewalk level. Um, and I will note that all of the actual residential units will start above the parkade. So there is a slight technicality between 5 and 6 stories. I think the majority of the building is intended to be 5 stories here. But again, how the building sits kind of in relation to the grades is still under development.
Thanks, Paul. So Hannah, I'm coming to you, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask your question. You do have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. Hi, I'm one of the residents on Erlton Terrace. So we're going to be the most affected by this construction. Um, but I'm happy that this is a nonprofit organization. Also happy that, you guys are making homes for low-income Calgarians. Just a question, the first question I had was about the parking stalls. In the application, we noticed that there's a right. So when you rezone this, you already have the stalls, half of the 50% of the stalls are required. And then there's an extra, an additional reduction that you guys have requested based on the public transportation availability. But no matter how I calculate based on the bylaws, and being a resident here for now, 7, 8 years, it's not easy to find public transportation on regular basis from here. So I would like to understand first how you guys have calculated that. Secondly, if this passes through and seems like the city has already agreed with you guys, so it will go through, can you please let us know how long will the construction take?
I can start to answer and see if someone else jumps in. Thanks very much, by the way, for the comments. First thing I'd like to say is that I know, similar to my previous comment about the difference between the city departments approving policy and council giving direction, and then the city selling this site, and then the city administration reviewing this application. I would say it's never a certainty. City administration reviews these applications very strictly. It's already been a very difficult process in terms of how we have navigated to ensure that we can meet the expectations on this site that we've been sort of directed to do by other members of the city. So it's never a foregone conclusion that this is approved. I would also say that sorry, I'm losing my train on the question. Can you just quickly remind me the rest of it?
Yeah. So my first question is about the reduction in parking that
Yes.
was written in the application based on the availability of transportation, like public transport. But when I look at the city bylaws and look at Google Maps and try to calculate the distances, there's nothing in this area that, to me, satisfies those 3 or 4 guidelines. So can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, I'm sorry for missing the question there. And I see that there is actually another comment in the chat as well about parking. So this is the parking minimums that are set through the direct control are coming from two different approaches. One is that we are trying to sort of encapsulate in this direct control district the specific parking minimums that we would have already targeted through some relaxations. So we would have been eligible for that relaxation that you mentioned, and then we likely would have sought a little bit further of relaxation as well. So this is our opportunity to just be transparent in what we're trying to do on the site. But in terms of how we accommodate these 62 units on the site, one level of parking is really all that is economically feasible, given the building model. And if we had to move to a model where there were a second level of parking, I don't think this project would be viable for Onward. So in terms of how that affects the people who are living here, who are going to have fewer parking stalls, our intention is to provide in trade additional non-vehicular amenities on site, bicycle stalls. We're going to have some specifically assigned stalls for motorized scooter parking, which is something that Onward does in their facility. And I think also just the concept of induced demand. I understand that a lot of people in this area do drive, but it's also a highly walkable area. There's a lot of access to things that people want to do on an everyday basis, and this even Mission Road itself is building out more and more as we've seen over time.
Yeah,
And Jack, if I can maybe support you a little bit on that, I just wanted to note that part of our commitment to this site was to provide 25% accessible units for people with physical disabilities. And the caveat there is that we are providing an entire floor of parking for the site. The nuance with providing enhanced accessibility is that you have to provide additional accessible parking stalls. So that ends up taking a bit more space. As we all know, handicap stalls are a little bit bigger than standard stalls. So we want to provide a little bit of flexibility to be able to accommodate additional handicap stalls within a very kind of standard size parkade.
Thank you for that. It doesn't still answer my question on how was this transportation distance calculated. I don't want to dwell on it too long, but I have lived in this area for like past 8 years, and yes, some things are very accessible, but commuting from here is not the easiest. The bus that is closest to us is on average 42 minutes. So I would like you guys to keep that in mind, because you're building this for people who are already probably low income, might not have a car, justifying your parking stalls, but also might then have additional problems with transportation. So just as a resident, one comment there. And can you please also let us know how long do you anticipate this construction to go on?
Well, I'll start. So the measurement, Hannah, is from the site to McLeod Trail. It's in the bylaw. It's a distance to just a primary transit route, which is McLeod Trail. So the number 10 route. That's how the city decides it. And then I'll let Paul answer the other part.
Yeah, we are currently working with a construction partner to kind of help narrow that down. And I will note that kind of the entitlement and design process, will take a certain amount of time. And then the construction process is variable based on when we're able to start construction. Weather-related items are included, but I would say generally the range of timeline that I would expect on this is probably between 13 and 16 months.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question, Hannah. I'm going to go, there was one more question, little bit connected to parking, and I believe it was on the parkade access. So just for clarification, if we're aware, where will the parkade entry be? And also just out of curiosity, if there has been any further transportation studies done around any kind of impacts to pedestrian safety along Mission Road. So yeah, so parkade access. So maybe pause here for a minute.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We're not at development permit stage yet, so it hasn't been confirmed. But the intended approach would be parkade access from Mission Road directly across from First Street, as shown on this plan.
And do you want to speak to any of the transportation studies that have happened, Jack, and maybe some if there's been any discussion around pedestrian measures or traffic calming measures?
Yes, so the intent is for there to be a transportation analysis completed for this site.
Thanks, Jack. Just going back to height, because I just want to conclude this. There was a follow-up question. There's actually two follow-up questions that I'd like to take a minute on. Someone's just clarifying that they're still not clear on the height. Is the 5 stories plus parkade or 5 stories including parkade? So just some clarity there again.
No more than 6 stories, including the parking.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to derail the conversation, but I wanted to maybe take an opportunity. Am I still sharing
Yes. Yeah, we can
the
see
screen? Can you see Google Maps now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just take an opportunity to look from Street View, looking up the hill. So if this parkade is access coming in roughly here, can't get quite on the spot, but coming in at grade, you can see how the visual side of this building, which is I would say about 2 to 3 stories size, but is built partway up the hill. It appears larger from here than it does from Erlton Terrace. It appears quite a bit lower from Erlton Terrace, like 1 to 2 stories lower. So I don't know if that helps folks, but
no, appreciate that, Jack. We also had a follow-up from Gord, so thanks, Gord, for submitting a second question regarding some of the planning. So we just wanted to clarify that the city had sent out a region planning brochure and letting people know how the city plan was evolving for their area, so the West Elbow plan, and that none of this particular site was disclosed through that plan. So just for clarification, Jack, if you wanted to add some color to the regional or the local area plan efforts.
no, and it's really just comes down to those two different groups and 2 different efforts there. The policy planning team is specifically looking at high level, and they're not looking. They might consider specific sites, but they're not really going through it one at a time and identifying policy for each.
Okay. Thank you. We have a couple hands up, and I think Andrew had his hand up first, so I'm going to go to Andrew. If you have I'm going to give you a chance to speak. You just have to unmute yourself. Hi, Andrew. Are you there? Andrew, we don't hear you if you're trying to speak. So just want to make sure you unmute yourself.
Is that better?
Yes,
Can you hear
hi.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's actually Shannon, who I'm here
Hi,
with
Shannon.
Andrew.
Yeah.
So I wanted to thank you for organizing this session because it's really good to have an opportunity to talk about this with our neighbors and with the proposed developer. So before I get into my specific question, I just want to comment a little bit on the accessibility and the parking. I've lived in the community for 30 years, and I do walk to work all year round. And I will tell you, it's a difficult commute in the wintertime, and it's a pretty lonely walk until I get at least down to the Safeway. So there's not really very many people commuting in the wintertime. And wintertime is also when the snow routes come into effect for the bus that only runs every 42 minutes. So people who are trying to get to work are going to have a very difficult time. And on the accessibility units that you have in there, and the higher proportion of accessible units, the concern that I would have is, yes, having higher parking requirement for those people who require accessibility. But if a whole floor is dedicated to that, you'll need all of the parking for that nearly, because and if you have a difficulty with accessibility, you're not getting off this hill. It's super icy going down Mission Road all winter long. And it really doesn't matter if you go up the hill, go through the terrace and go down Erlton. It's the same thing with all the curb cuts and the grade changes. and the difficulty with the terrain, it's always very difficult to walk in the winter. So I just putting those comments aside, the question that I have is about the utilities and the services to the building. So a building like this is going to have mechanical equipment, HVAC equipment, venting for the parkade, waste removal. I don't know if a development like this is required to have composting, garbage, and recycling like the rest of us. But what is the intention what are the requirements that the city has for, to provide those facilities, and how is that going to be integrated into a site where the people that are on Erlton Terrace, this is their front yards, this is what they're looking at, and I'd like to know what that might look like.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah.
I appreciate the feedback. I don't know if I have anything necessarily to respond to the comments about the site specifically. I think that's just good feedback for us to take on. In terms of how the site, this would be serviced. So there are existing utilities within the road right away. And so we would be connecting to the existing utilities, assuming that there's capacity. If there's not, that's the responsibility of the developer to make sure that there is capacity. In terms of waste and recycling, my assumption would be that it would be from Erlton Terrace. That's really, in my opinion, the only viable location, but it's certainly something that we will consider closely at development permit stage.
Yeah, and then how about the mechanical equipment and venting?
Is your concern mainly with noise and those type of things, like nuisances?
Noise and visuals and smells.
Yeah, nuisance for sure. Yeah, well, that's a very important, and I think it's definitely something that needs to be considered in any new build for multi-residential. I know we all hear horror stories about that one place that built HVAC on the roof that's way too loud. I know that Onward is working with a very reputable group, and so I think they would be very interested in working with the community throughout the development permit and construction process to make sure those types of things are addressed.
Thank you.
Shannon. We have a couple of questions coming in about some of the existing trees on the site. So maybe, Jack, just maybe staying on this slide, can you please clarify the distance, the distance that will be from the homes on the east side of the site? And will the setback area include some of the mature trees on the east side? And then these trees have been an important screening element for some of the homes along 34th Avenue.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. And we did hear some of those same comments when we met with the community association. We met with some folks who actually live adjacent to the site. So some of those trees may be within the existing utility right of way, and therefore it's possible that they would be protected. But at this point, because we don't have a site survey completed, we can't say for sure exactly where that boundary would be drawn. And I just think in general the team is very aware that those are an important element of screening, and we would make efforts to retain them if possible.
Thanks, Jack. Bruce, you have your hand up and you've also asked a question in the chat. So I'm going to come to you so that you can speak your question. Bruce, let me know you have to unmute yourself so you can speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Bruce.
Great, thanks. Now, the previous person actually probably raised way more of the concern around transportation than what I was going to talk about, and did it very eloquently, and has way more experience having lived there for a lot of years, and really points out that, we are in a winter climate and half the year. So those are issues, although I commend you for looking at alternatives on biking and scooters and everything else, where that's located at the top of a hill. And I don't believe there are any bike lanes also in that area. So I think it's very challenging. But I guess the one part I still want to clarify is, in the interest of transparency, you talk about 62 units. How many actual parking spots are you currently looking at in the building at this time?
I feel like that might be more of a Paul question. I can tell you what the calculation would be based on what's in the direct control, but I don't know if we have a closer number on actual.
It's just a number.
Oh, yeah, do we have a specific number we're targeting or?
Thank you. It's early days, and what I can say is that there will be an entire floor of parking
But I
that
can't,
is.
sorry, I think most people here can't relate to what an entire floor is because I have a different visual of a floor than what you may have as you are looking at it from a very different perspective. So I'm an engineer and I deal in quantitative numbers. And if I know you've talked about how many handicap parking spots you're going to have, which is great, but you can do the math and calculate based on storage and everything else that you've got to allow for how many units. And I guess the follow-up part of that would be, is there any provision there for visitor parking?
Yeah, it's an important question, and thank you for that. I think since we're so early in the process, we are going to provide as many stalls as we can, but part of the issue is the is will be the requirement that the city of Calgary ends up imposing on us for the handicapped stall requirement. So that's the variable that's unknown right now from the city of Calgary.
Yeah. Maybe also, Jack, do you want to speak to sometimes the typical process of where exact parking units typically comes out in terms of process?
Well, so the number would be put forward with the development permit. You'd see exactly how many are being proposed.
Mhm.
I hesitate to give a number, but I believe that based on the test fit, it's somewhere between 20 and 30 stalls. Depending, I know Paul is not wanting to be too specific based on what size they're going to have to be and how much room they have, but that's what I believe the
Because
range
you don't
is.
have the space for anything more than that.
And Bruce, you had another question. I appreciate your question. Again, it is often, so typically the exact details on parking does come at the development permit stage. So, but you had another question as well around, is it possible through design change to get required 62 units in 4 stories rather than 5? Did you want to elaborate on that question or?
No, that's fine if you can just answer that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for your questions, Bruce. So yeah, have we looked at fitting the 62 units in 4 stories rather than 5 to potentially decrease height?
I definitely think if that were possible, we would consider it. The test fit that I saw required 5 stories.
Okay.
If it's going to have a parkade.
Okay. Thanks, Jack. I also just want to make a note that we had another comment during the chat about the number of parking stalls. So we received a comment regarding from a community member just saying that the 27 stalls would be ideal, that would be what they would like to see. So just a note there to pass along to the group. Thanks for the comment. We have a couple more hands up. Henna, I'm going to come back to you or actually, Amy, I think you might have had your hand up first. So Amy, I'm going to give you a chance to speak your question. You just have to unmute yourself.
Thanks, much appreciated. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. So just questioning, oh, sorry, I just want to ask how many slides you have because I want to give you guys time to be able to get through those. Is there much more that we need to cover, or are we okay to just keep kind of asking questions?
We're
We're
officially
done
in
the
question.
presentation.
Yeah, we're
Lovely,
officially in the question
excellent.
portion. Yeah.
Okay, I just hate it when a meeting's taken over by questions, but thank you very much. So we're just wondering around the utility. Again, I live in Erlton Terrace and it is a main concern for us. So with the utility vehicles coming in through Erlton Terrace, we are not serviced in the winter, and Erlton Terrace is literally an ice rink. I can't imagine a utility truck would be able to get up there. We've seen them try and fail. I'm just wondering, obviously, I know you guys are still in the proposal phase, but just wondering if that's been a consideration. If not, are you able to note it? I can't very well imagine that any kind of service vehicle would be able to get up there in the winter.
Could you just make a clarification for me? Are you talking about like waste and recycling?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So in the winter, there's no waste and recycling pickup?
No, ours is through our back alleyway by the cemetery. So, yeah, I cannot tell you enough. It is a couple of inches of ice and it does not thaw until I would say last week. So a utility going through Erlton Terrace would be an absolute cluster. It just would not work.
Just
So you're where
pulling
you're
up.
seeing those grey buildings, Erlton Terrace there. Yep.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
and where your mouse is right now, it all accumulates right there. Just going to the left a little bit more,
yeah.
and it does not thaw.
I mean, I, I I don't want to speak too much because obviously nobody knows the site better than you. Um, I live I live in a home with a lane, and we never get we never get anyone in to clear the ice. Like sometimes it's like 3 inches thick. It was this past winter. The garbage trucks do come through. They don't seem to have an issue. They just have a lot of weight and they have good traction. So I don't know for sure though.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see.
Fair.
Thanks for your question. Going back to unit count, we did have a question come in early in our question and answer session I want to get back to. And thanks again for those who are still with us. We appreciate your time tonight. Is 62 the actual minimum number of units that this particular person's saying they've seen plus or minuses or sort of approximations, but is 62 the firm number?
I'll probably defer to Paul. I'm the one who put the plus and minus in the presentation materials, so I may be wrong about the minus part.
Okay.
The number is 61.
61. Okay, so minus, I guess, minus on the 61.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. And is that the minimum or is that the set number, just to clarify?
That is the minimum expectation, but we're not trying to exceed that.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. Oh, another question. And I don't know if we might not be familiar with this building, but maybe Jack, Paul, or Bev, if you are, I know I'm not. Is there any way to do a comparison to what we're proposing to number 8 Mission Road, which has just been completed? Is anyone familiar with that particular development? We might have to look
Ruth, is
into
it
this
possible
more.
to guide me to it on Google Maps?
Yeah, Ruth, if you're
Is that the Opus development by any chance? That's at the corner of McLeod and Mission Road?
I don't know. So Ruth, this was your question. If you're still online, you maybe
That's
do a
Mission
follow-up,
Landing.
or if anyone can clarify the location and we can perhaps let you know. We have
Yeah. I
hands
was
up.
gonna say, and obviously we did this already a little bit by going down from the bottom of the site and then looking from the top. If the building is 5 stories, just say that as an assumption. If it's 5 stories and the first story is at ground level, then it will be viewed as 5 stories from ground level from Mission Road. But the height difference is about 5 meters, which is almost 2 stories. So hypothetically, it would be viewed as 3 to 4 stories from the top, which is not dissimilar from the existing development at the top of the hill. And I think that obviously we'd really like to be able to share those kinds of visualizations to really help people understand this site. That is something that we will be doing when we have a development permit application, but we don't want to mislead either at this stage.
Thanks, Jack. And some of these questions, if we can answer them tonight, like that comparison, we will be following up on that after the session through our Q&A. So thanks for the questions that are coming in. I'm going to go, Henna had her hand up for a little while now, so I'm going to come back to Henna. So I'm asking you to unmute, Henna, if you'd like to speak your question.
Yeah, thank you. I was the one who commented about 27 stalls. It's not that we want 27 stalls. It's those were the ones that were mentioned in the application that was sent to the city. So I think with the rezoning, you can get down to 36 or something. And then an additional reduction was asked to bring this number down to 27 in that application. It's not the number we are asking, it's just the number that was there.
Okay.
The question was about this additional parking. Is this for like for people with special needs, or is this for the bicycles, the one that kind of opens up on Erlton Terrace?
Mm-hmm. That was intended to give a visualization of a hypothetical where there could be 1 or 2 additional stalls available on the top for maybe visitor parking or similar, but that's really very conceptual at this point.
And my second question is, if this big building is going to come there, is there anything you can do or the city will do where they will come and clean our street? Because I know Amy has already said this, but we have these. I am at the start of the street, and I see almost every week somebody stuck there trying to get out. And I'm sure the trucks will make it, but is there something that the city will do to clean this, or after these 62 units, sorry, or 61 units are built?
That's a tough question for me to answer because it's sort of a city operations thing. I think it would be important to petition through the community association and any avenues that you have to get that service. And if we're submitting a development permit, we can get a little bit more into the details of what that street's going to look like. Currently, it's sort of unfinished on the south side, so there would be an expectation of it being completed. You wouldn't just have a gravel finishing, which is, I'm sure, contributing to the problem. But we could also start a conversation about how to make sure that the city is managing those types of services to the south too.
And one more question while I have this map open. So this white line is the boundary of the land that you have purchased, and where those little cars are white and blue, that area and that hill going down, that is not going to be affected, right?
So the white area is the property line, correct?
Okay.
And the cars on the south side, is that what you're referring
No,
to?
I mean on Erlton Terrace, there are two white
Oh,
cars.
yes, up here. They're not part of the site. It's possible that as part of the development permit, the city would require some sort of improvements or changes to the way that road is completed. But we don't know that at this stage.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna. We've got a lot of great questions coming in, and I just want to note that we are about 4 minutes to the hour, and we did say the meeting would last for an hour. We're going to stick around for at least another 20 minutes to continue to answer the questions that are coming in. I will be skipping to questions that maybe we haven't touched on yet as best as possible, just to get as many responses as doable. And just a reminder for those of you, if you maybe need to drop off this meeting, we are recording the session, and we will be sharing that recording with all the participants that registered. So you can come back to this question and answer. We're also going to be sharing a summary of the questions we've received about the project with all participants as well. So thanks for your time, but we will keep trying to get through as many questions as possible this evening. And then we will also be sharing the slide deck as well through that follow-up email. I'm just going to go, Tara has had her hand up for a while. So Tara, if I'm going to give you a chance to ask a question, but if you don't mind, we are trying to get to many, so I'll give you a chance to speak, but we'll keep you to maybe a couple questions. Unmute if you're getting the request.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Tara.
Hi.
Or Tara.
Yeah. I'm just going to echo Shannon's comments. I know a thing or two about CMHC funding, so I understand perfectly well why you are looking for the parking relaxations. I think it's inappropriate because you may not always own this land. You may not always own this building. I have watched other affordable housing operators in the city build things and then sell them. Now, I'm not saying to say you're going to sell it tomorrow, but I still think seeking such an extreme parking relaxation is a disservice to this community. Silvera sold their land in behind Shaganappi Golf Course for a very tidy sum, and there is a very dense development going in there now. So the fact that you're trying to put up a building and get all these concessions from the city without really knowing how long you're going to own it is, I think, inappropriate. And I think you should be getting the full parking allocation that is needed to successfully house those people who are going to be living in this building. I'm going to echo Shannon's comments and also about the noise. I also know what happens when you put in the super efficient air pumps and heat pumps. I've watched that in other projects of mine and how much noise they create. So I would ask you to take extra care on that. And I would also tell you that even in Park Hill, and I've lived in Park Hill for 20 years, the garage trucks do not manage our hills well. They have taken out garages. So I would submit that hill is not just a minor concern, and you should look very carefully at the way you're going to manage all the environmental aspects like garbage and compost and pickup. And I just think that I understand, I know what the cost escalations are. I do it in my own project economics, but I also think that you are overpopulating this building inappropriately, and you are not actually fitting into the vernacular of this neighborhood. And you are going to be doing a disservice to a lot of the residents that'll be living in it, because you will not be able to adequately service them. And that's my piece.
Appreciate you sharing your comments with us. Thanks, Tara. And maybe Bev, I know that one of the questions underlying Tara's comment was that what Onward's long-term plans are with this site and this building, and perhaps you can maybe speak to some of your history in Calgary or your operations of your buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the comments, Tara or Tara. And I certainly cannot comment directly on what Silvera's model is, but I'll go back to Onward. Our approach to housing is that we build and maintain properties. We own properties. We're here for the long term when it comes to affordability. Also, there are many housing agreements, obviously, that we may have as a result of our financial piece that we'll put together, our financing for this property, which will also indicate our long-term commitment to affordable housing and affordability in this particular project. I get the last piece I would mention is that any funding that comes to Onward related to housing is through a charitable donation ensures that this housing will remain affordable in perpetuity. So I won't go into, again, I'm not certain what Silvera's model is, if a portion of their model is different from Onward's, but I certainly can tell you that our commitment is long-term affordability.
Thanks.
And ownership.
And Bev, we did have a question around maybe the anticipated demographic of the building. Just people have mentioned that they did hear the mention of 25%, accessible housing would be provided. Do you want to maybe speak to a little bit of those who might be served by this development?
Absolutely. And I think at this point it might be a bit early to say exactly what the population mix might be. And Paul, you might want to jump in on this one as well, or Chris, I think if you're still there. But certainly what does occasionally arise through the course of putting together a project like this is that we will seek support and funding through sometimes other orders of government. So we obviously have a commitment with the City of Calgary related to the non-market disposition. We will also potentially be reaching out to the province and the federal government to look for support as well, be it through grants or through financing. And there may be some additional criteria added to target populations through that, always on the affordability piece. And yes, so at the end of the day, the target population may shift somewhat, but it will always be low income housing. Paul, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that piece.
Yeah, thanks, Bev. I would just support you kind of by noting that Onward's model is not a high acuity population. It is primarily dealing with, people from all walks of life who maybe just can't afford a market-based unit. And I think, these are a lot of people. These are, kind of maybe some teachers and firefighters and, people who clean houses around Calgary, just people that just don't have a high enough median income to afford something that would be generally offered in the market. I think that Onward's been particularly successful with achieving a quality of design through all of its recent developments that fit incredibly well into the community. And there's no visual cues that this is an affordable housing project at all. So I think that there's a lot of comfort to be taken in that, and I think Onward's track record in building and managing these projects, is really top notch.
Thanks. I do want to get to a question that came in around just general next steps and timeline, because I know people might be starting to drop off the call. So if everything moves forward as planned, when will shovels be in the ground? When would the building be open? What would maybe be the earliest possible timeline to see construction starting on the site. Do you want to speak to that, Jack, just in terms of land use process, and then maybe Paul jumping in with maybe the next steps?
I think that's so. In terms of this process, we mentioned that the next steps would be for us to receive comments from the city, which we have actually just recently received our first comment set. So we'll work with them on the comments they have pertaining to the access to the site, utilities, those type of things, and refining the land use. We also are receiving comments that have been submitted from the community through to the city. Those will be provided to us as well, and we'll be expected to address those. So then the next steps, once everything is resolved, is to take it before Planning Commission. Planning Commission doesn't approve land use, but they do give commentary on it. And then council at a public hearing will vote to either approve or deny the application. And that's so there was a couple comments in the chat, and I'll just try to address things. There were questions about when can we provide feedback. So obviously now to us, to the city file planner, whose contact information is in the chat. You can also go to the city's development map website. And so that you can see any active development applications, including this one, provide feedback, and then the last opportunity is public hearing.
And then Paul, do you want to speak to maybe the remaining sort of construction or development timeline?
I think, there's it takes time, frankly, to be able to put together a robust set of drawings for this. So we anticipate, hopefully, getting the development permit approved after the land use. We're looking at sometime in the fall of this year for that approval process. And then we don't anticipate really having the building permit completed until, frankly, the spring. And we'd be looking at kind of a spring, kind of early summer start for construction of 2026.
Thanks. We do have a couple technical questions that have also come in, specifically around what is the width of the utility right-of-way on the east side of the property? Do we have that exact width? Paul, yeah, go.
I do. It is 6 meters or roughly 18 feet.
Okay, thank you. And question also, maybe Paul, perhaps, because I think this extends to the development permit process. But as per construction details, will we be sharing a construction traffic plan with the development permit so we know how trucks might be routing? There's concern around, the access of Mission Road and Mission Towers and the busyness of some of the construction in the area.
All of the construction related activities are submitted as part of the building permit. So that is a building permit related item specifically. And that to get to that point, I think we'll have to advance the design a lot more than it is right now. And really have a level of detail around our construction partner understanding the project, having time to do the logistics, and trying to minimize impacts for all residents. That's always a concern.
Well, just going through a few questions. We do have a couple sort of repeat questions around parking. So we do appreciate all the comments coming in about the parking. We'll take those comments very seriously as we continue to refine and evaluate the application. There's a more technical question that I'm going to try and do my best to maybe paraphrase here. So I think going back to the issue around some of the ice buildup, the road is concave, but there's no specification on which road we're referring to. The road. So Robert, if you want to add some clarity to your question, we welcome it. But the issue is the road is concave and very deep for drainage. The depth of the ice is closer to 10 to 12 inches and vehicles can get stuck. I think that's the back alley comment, perhaps, Chuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the expertise is appreciated, and if it has to do with Erlton Terrace, there may be some ability for us to, look at how that is like finished in the future to make sure, and then maybe the city needs to address it. Yeah, obviously this is a hilly area, and there are areas that are challenging to navigate in the winter. That's just sort of the nature of these types of communities.
Yeah, but appreciate the comments and we appreciate being made aware. There's a question around connecting, the possibility to connect, I should say, extend Erlton Terrace and join it up to Mission Road on the west side so that Erlton Terrace becomes a through street, not a cul-de-sac. I think this is just kind of a question on curiosity. Is this something that might be getting evaluated?
Yeah, I don't think the city would ever consider it. The grade difference is too great. You'd be coming down to provide another intersection a short distance around the corner from First Street, which would be a sightline problem. So I think it would be honestly better for everyone if that were not the case. I know there are challenges with Mission Road in terms of the traffic that cuts through the community. We've heard that quite a bit, and it is a challenge with this site, and there's only so many ways to slice it, and we will work with the city. We are having the transportation analysis done to understand how parking could be accommodated on the site as well, and it'll be a topic of conversation.
Yeah,
Jack, if I can just add to that, I think it's worth noting that the city is maintaining the right of way should they want to do that connection in the future. That is not a part of our it's not a part of the property that was granted to Onward. So the property line does cut off kind of where Erlton Terrace would continue. So listen, that's up to the city, frankly. It's not a part of our application.
I guess if you're saying it's possible, I just can't see it. But yeah, maybe I'm getting too in the weeds.
No, appreciate the clarity from both. Many of the questions that have been submitted have been answered. We have a couple repeats still in the queue. One final question, and I think this again is probably too early to maybe respond to specifically, but has there been any consideration that vehicles like garbage vehicles, garbage collection vehicles access the site through Mission Road rather than through behind the Erlton Terrace side? It might be too early to discuss that, but Paul, did you want to maybe bring
No, I think I
Sure.
agree too. I think the
yeah.
city would decide that, like,
Yeah, that is definitely a development permit related question. We have not settled on where trash collection or recycling collection will happen. That is not settled as a part of this at all. So I will say it really is up to city preference, and we're going to have to kind of work that through kind of with the city as we go through the details of the development permit application.
We don't have too many more questions coming in, so I just want to give everyone a few minutes in case there are some last minute questions. I do want to express our appreciation on behalf of the project team, because this is they were very good questions. We appreciated the opportunity to discuss the proposal in more detail. We have heard a lot of comments still about parking, so we appreciate those comments coming through as well. Jack, maybe while I'm waiting to see if there's any more questions coming through, did you want to maybe just remind everyone of the next steps in the process in terms of the land use process?
Sure. Yeah, no, let me also say thank you to everyone for their time. And I know also that sometimes it's challenging engaging on land use applications because most people want to see the specifics of the building and how it's going to work. And at this point, we're really just defining a box and what could hypothetically go in it. We are very much interested in answering those questions as soon as possible too. So yeah, we appreciate the feedback. We're going to be collecting feedback. The city's closing date for the initial round of feedback is May 21st. And then we'll get a little bit more information soon about the timing of planning commission and council. When this application does go to council, there'll be a public notification sent out in the mail, and the sign on site will be updated as well with that date.
Thanks, Jack. We did have one more question come through, a question around that, the development does raise concern in terms of cumulative impact with 3 other projects happening along Mission Road. And that residents along Erlton Terrace, they don't have alternative through routes. And just what steps are being taken as part of this application to address some of those transportation and the cumulative impact issues?
Sure. In terms of how an individual applicant should address cumulative impacts, of other development near them, really the city encourages and the applicant should focus on what is proposed on their site and how to address it. If there are like service or transportation improvements that are required, those are incumbent on the applicant. But really, cumulative impacts are managed by the city administration and council in terms of what they choose to support and improve in an area. So that's more their purview, and they have to make those decisions about how to continue servicing and ensure the transportation and parking is working. That's sort of not the individual applicant role.
Thanks, Jack. One final question that also came through while we were chatting has there been any consideration to the site placement, moving it further west to protect trees on the east side? And perhaps maybe you could share the screen again of just about the lot size and the current building placement, if you don't mind.
Yeah. If that is possible, we certainly will explore the opportunity to do that. I think it would obviously be beneficial to retain trees wherever possible on the site. We just don't know exactly how big this building needs to be in order to meet the commitment, and we don't know exactly where the site survey is and how many of these are on that utility right away.
Thanks. We have one final hand up just before we go to Hannah. I do want to just let people know we have dropped a survey link in this chat. So this is a survey, when you complete it, it comes to us. So it'll be summarized as part of our application. So we will, along with the comments we've received this evening, your comments through the survey will be synthesized into an engagement summary that we share with the city and also share back with all of you. We've also dropped in the location to the development map, Calgary, the City of Calgary's DMAP, which has the contact information and the method to get in touch with the city and the file manager for this particular application. We do have one hand up, so Hannah, I'll come to you again. Just so I'll ask you to unmute.
Yeah, so sorry, just to follow up on the garbage, you guys mentioned that's a decision the city makes where these the garbage will be. So do you think it's a thing we should bring up with the city? If we want to propose, let's say as residents of Erlton Terrace, that it's not on that side or it's from the parkade or this side. So can we bring this up with the city, and do you have any say in that?
I would say yes, it's definitely something that is logical to bring up, and if there's we can talk about it in the land use. They might feel it's more of a development permit discussion. When there is a development permit discussion, that would absolutely be the right time to have that conversation.
Okay. And again, thank you so much for listening to all of us and so calmly. So I appreciate that.
No, thank you very much too.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Bev or Paul, before we sign off, would you like to add anything or to conclude the session?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to just thank everyone on behalf of Onward and Paul and Chris. We're really grateful to have this opportunity to be a part of the Erlton and Park Hill communities. We're here to work through this process with the community and again appreciate everyone's interest in the project. I'd like to thank the team at BNA as well for their hard work coming forward this evening and helping Onward through this process. We're really grateful for everyone's time tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'll jump in there too and just echo those words. Thank you, Jack and team. I thought you did a great job, and thank you to all the participants. You know, the reason why Onward is successful is because we are able to work with communities and integrate our residents within the community. So these questions I thought were absolutely excellent, and your comments were fantastic, well positioned, and very respectful. And thank you for the tone of the meeting. I thought it was truly worthy of your time and our time tonight. So thank you for giving up this time, and your questions again were fantastic. So thank you so much. We look forward to receiving more of your feedback and taking this into the next process, and looking forward to working with you. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thanks all. And with that, we'll conclude the webinar. And again, this will be available for those who are unable to attend. Thanks all.